welcome to another episode of Conversation with the Chef. I'm Jo Ritty and I love sharing with you the conversations I get to have with talented and passionate chefs. It's the backstory, if you will, to the food they're putting up. I begin today by acknowledging the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, traditional custodians of the land where this conversation takes place, and I pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. Today I'm chatting to Hugh Sanderson from Custodian Kitchen in Moorabbin and Bar Savarin in Cheltenham. I first met Hugh when I was writing about Bar Savarin, a very lovely wine bar which he recently opened with a gun hospo crew, all Southside stars in their own right. I love the way Hugh talked then about the idea behind Savarin, which comes from the French writer of gastronomy Jean-Briard Savarin, who said, "To invite people to dine with us is to make ourselves responsible for their well-being for as long as they're under our roof." That lovely idea of hospitality is super present amongst the team, and I really wanted to hear more from Hugh. The team have been waiting for a liquor licence for months so that they can open 4 nights a week instead of just the one as they've been doing. And Hugh and I discussed that in the chat the other day. Literally, the next day, I saw on Instagram that the licence has come through and Savarin is able to operate in all its glory. I'm so happy for them, and I'm happy that Hugh is feeling better because, as is the way these days, our first attempt at a conversation had to be postponed because he'd succumbed to the spicy cough. There is so much for people in hospitality to consider now, more than ever, and I'm grateful to Hugh for his generosity in sharing where he's at now, as well as his story.
Thank you.
See you in the morning.
Thanks for doing this.
No, that's all good. Thanks for.
How are you feeling?
Like I feel okay. Thank you. I feel it's weird. Like I don't really feel any different to sort of, how I did 3 or 4 days ago.
Yeah.
So I guess my symptoms were fairly mild, really.
Yeah.
I haven't lost taste or smell, which is like great because our chef did.
That would be terrible as a chef.
I think you just rely on it so much. Like I can't imagine. There was the one thing I was like, if I get COVID, please don't let me lose that. My partner, she lost hers Monday, and so she can taste like a few things here and there, but it's very muted.
How long does that take until it comes
I don't know. I mean, she's kind of like, look, you can retrain. So she gave our chef like a few pointers on how to like retrain because she does a lot of stuff around that area, so she kind of knows what to do.
Okay.
Smelling like oranges and lemons and onions and all that kind of thing. So
yeah, right.
But anyway, so no. But look, other than that, good. I think I was fairly unscathed as far as COVID goes. Really, yeah. It's crazy to think that we've spent 2 years trying to do everything we can to dodge it, and now we sort of have no choice. It's just like.
I saw like some kind of viral video on TikTok about this guy going, what did we just spend the last 2 years for? What's happened to COVID?
Yeah.
No one talks about it
anymore.
I know.
I appreciate what we did and how it was, and
absolutely.
I understand that, but it's just, here we are now, and it's like, I have had that thing that I tried so hard not to get.
Exactly right.
And then suddenly after 2.5 years, or just over 2 years, like, was the first time it affected the business as well.
Ah.
It affected Savarin earlier on in the year because, like, some of the guys got it then. Yeah. But it's the first time, we stayed open all through COVID. We did takeaway and we were doing deliveries of fruit and vegetables and meat, and we sort of did what we could do, but it was never shut us down.
Yeah.
Last week we sort of just went to like takeaway only, but like sort of even more restricted than what we did.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because we were just sort of like down, and we just like, we didn't want to affect any other staff and wanted to make sure our customers were safe, and anyway.
But that's the reality of it, isn't it? And that's why, I just keep seeing these really great businesses shutting down. You know, Anchovy, the latest one.
I know, it's amazing, isn't it?
Tea
Yeah.
Lee, I just think,
Yeah.
okay. And what was another one I saw that really surprised me? I mean, she'll do something else, and she's got the beautiful banh mi place. But yeah, you know, and maybe it was time anyway. But you know, I think it's forced a lot of people's hands, isn't it?
Yeah. It's. I mean, I'm so thankful we're in the suburbs and not the CBD. I would hate to see what it would be like to be in business in the CBD.
Yes.
You know, I think if you're the big boys, you'd be okay. You know,
Yeah.
you've got reputation to rely on and things. But yeah, I would hate to be a cafe or something, or a new business in the CBD.
But I'm fascinated because there are new businesses opening, and you know that I've written about and into openings. But as you say, they are the big boys. So her and I went to Connie's Melbourne, which is say people that have got Bar Margot and the Billy and so on.
Yeah.
And but even walking into those launches down Swanston Street, there are places where there are queues down the road, but they're like more sort of Asian places. And I was just like, oh, well, so what's going on there exactly?
I agree. I was in the city. I was in the city a couple of weeks ago, and the same thing. I was like, I don't even like. It's such a different. And I mean, I worked in the city for 15 odd years, and then step out of it for 5 or 6, and then come back, and it's like the city I remember, but then it's not. There are so many, up the top end, like the sort of the between Williams and King and that end. Like there was all these new arcades and like hotels and things that I'd never. It was like last time I was there, it was nothing. It was just there was what businesses were there, and that was kind of it. So, and it's. I mean, we were the same with Savarin. I mean, we were like, we don't want to back down to COVID.
No.
That was my attitude. It's like, well, it's not. I don't. It's. We've got dreams, we've got passions, and there's things we want to do. Like we're not going to stop because of that. It's been difficult.
Yeah.
It was a very interesting December and January, but it's sort of in some ways it kind of feels like we're coming out the other side now.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Regardless of knowing how many cases we had today and how many people have COVID, I think everyone's still kind of. Get on with it, do the best they can do, really.
Well, everyone's people are tired. The idea of that whole lockdown and everything just makes our soul shrivel, I think. And so hopefully there's no going back to that. But I don't think you can't downplay that sort of latent exhaustion that people had from being so tense all the time. And and being a teacher as well, sort of see that we're still in that sort of cycle of kids being away or staff being away for some days. And
actually I read today that like some schools have had to go back to remote learning because so many teachers have been knocked out. So it's just, I guess at this point nothing would surprise us, right? If you go back to takeaway, or if you go back to remote learning, or if you go back from the office to suddenly working at home, it's just kind of
people don't they? They kind of joke about let's just have a mini lockdown so we can have a break because it is quite hectic. It's a hectic energy.
Yeah, it's an interesting, and it's I think lockdowns took their toll on everybody mentally as well. It's not. I think Easter and the last school holidays were quite an interesting time because it was the first time that there were no restrictions and everybody could go away. You could get on a plane and you could visit family wherever. You could go to Queensland, you could sit in the sun, whatever it might be, and there was sort of no fear of lockdowns or getting stuck somewhere or and so there was that. It was probably the first break that everyone had really had, and it was probably now everyone's suddenly caught up on everybody. Everyone's like, wow, we literally, even though we were in lockdown for 2 years, we probably didn't stop. We didn't really take holidays, and we put money into the house and renovations or whatever it might be, but it's not the same thing really. And then we sort of saw it.
You guys opened a bar,
and we opened a bar, but we saw the celebrations of coming out of lockdown. We saw people being like, oh my god, we can catch up with friends, we can go and like all the people that we haven't been able to see, we can we might not be able to do it at home yet, or we can go to a restaurant, we can go to a bar, we can go to a cafe. It's not a park and a picnic, or it's not my bubble buddy. It's kind of it's the greater, it's the ones that we sort of have missed. And so that was a really great thing to see as well.
Yeah, amazing. That's right.
Yeah.
I love seeing on your Instagram, is it Evan that runs that?
Yes, it is, yeah.
So he's very clever.
Yeah.
It's very funny, the little quips that he has on there, but just the responses that people...
Yeah.
I mean, I guess that's people in the neighbourhood or your friends or whatever, but it's really lovely.
Yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting... I think you sort of become connected to some customers because, you sort of... you get to know them and you sort of, your regulars, you sort of form these little friendships, and then, people start really rooting for you. They really want to see you succeed, and they see other successes that we have in the business, and then they're like, oh my God, that's great. We've sort of known about it. We think you totally deserve this. And, so it's,
Well, we have a cafe in the bottom of our apartment building, and I think it's that thing of when you go every day and get a coffee and the people are really nice and they remember your name and they ask about things and you make that bond, then you feel, and that's why I think that's what hospitality should be, that you feel appreciated by them and you feel a bit special and, you're spending money, but you're still eating and drinking with them and so on, and I think that's what you hope for, especially in a local like Savarin and here at Custodian.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's... look, I mean, it comes back to Savarin, I guess, and how I look at... I mean, if I'm going to be sort of talk about myself and the businesses, I've always... Savarin's quote about sort of welcoming a guest into your business and, you are responsible for their wellness, their happiness and well-being, while in your care. It's always, as soon as I heard it, 15 odd years ago, it sort of was like, what, that's what I want. That's what I expect. Don't always get it, but I think it's a lovely thing to have someone feel that when they come into your business. Some people don't necessarily want it, and I think you need to be able to recognise the people who just want the transaction and that's it. But I think it just gives it's that little bit extra on top, and that's sort of where the name, with Savarin and his quotes sort of came from. And here, the cafe, our catchphrase, if you will, is keepers of our trade.
Oh, that's nice.
And we were sort of really about, that old style service where, we show that we care, where there's a little bit of a bit more attention than what you would expect when you come to a cafe. And I think that's sort of our, I think we really sort of try and pride ourselves on that. We try and impart that with our staff as well. And it's not that you don't get to have fun. I mean, it's about sort of getting to see... And sort of, I guess you just sort of get to know everyone on a deeper level, customers as well, and your staff. It's really quite a lovely thing.
But surely that's why people get into hospitality. It doesn't always seem that that's the case in some venues, but I was sort of interested to know how you got into it in the start.
Sure.
And I was reading a little Q&A that you did in 2013 in the Australian, and
is that still around?
Some of your ideas
that used to be on my CV.
Nice. And just saying how your grandmother kicked everything off.
Exactly, it's true. We grew up with that sort of always the Sunday roast at Grandma's house, and she would make everything from scratch. She'd make her own bread. I always remember staying there as kids and. That fresh loaf of bread would come out in the morning and there'd be butter, lashings of butter. It was always just it always just stuck with me as this, she sort of cooked, it was what she did. She worked for the CWA and, she was always really involved in the church and always baking stuff, and there was always rock cakes, which I don't even really know what they are. I think they're scones with fruit and maybe some dried fruit. I don't know, but to us they were called rock cakes. Maybe that's just stuck because they were, I don't know, dry scones or something. But
no, there is a thing, but I don't.
Yeah, I might have to look up a CWA cookbook and have a look. But there was always that. She always loved cooking, and there's just something happened one day, and I must have been sick, and then I was watching Jeff Jantz on TV in the early 90s or something or other, and I just was like, I want to cook what he's just cooked. I don't even know what it was. I remember it had a lot of cheese. And I guess I just, that sort of feeling of like those family meals and, you know, everything sort of just there, and it was always delicious, and, you know, it just kind of, that's where it started really. And it started, I would sort of start cooking at grandma's house, you know, when we were, you know, mum and dad were separated, and so we'd be waiting for mum to come home and pick us up, and we just, you know, I'd sort of cook once a week, and then it just kind of grew from there. And in high school, I think I decided that I was, you know, that was the path that I wanted to take. So I did, you know, things that I would do to do that after. I wanted to finish Year 12. I was very adamant to finish Year 12, but I...
Are you from Melbourne?
No, I'm actually from Tasmania, from Hobart.
Wow.
Yeah,
Oh,
so I think it was called... I think here it's called VCAL, I believe, but I think it was vocational education and training or something. And so, you know, we could study hospitality management, and so I did my sort of first 2 years of my commercial cookery certificate in Year 11 and Year 12, and then knowing that I would leave and get an apprenticeship and become a chef. And so, you know, cooked all through high school. I had kitchen hand jobs, and, you know, cooked, you know, worked in the cold larder and like different restaurants in Hobart, and
were they, obviously they were good enough experiences for you to continue, but were they shouty chefs? And
no, look, they weren't. It wasn't until I actually started my apprenticeship that I got into the shouty chefs, and even then they weren't. I've never sort of worked under for sort of, you know, that style of chef.
Thank goodness.
Look, I mean, it's an interesting, you know, I don't think it works personally. I think you can get a lot more out of people if you treat them with the respect that they deserve. You know, I'm not a yeller, I'm not a screamer. You know, I lose my temper occasionally, but it's never berating or belittling or anything like that. It's not. I don't think that works. But yeah, you know, so these, yeah, I mean, I worked with some colourful characters. Yeah, but that was sort of, you know, I just planned my whole sort of like later teens knowing that I would become a chef.
And did you have a planned trajectory, like go overseas or become head chef?
No, I never went overseas, for better or worse. I always knew that I wanted to own something. That was always the goal. And then I struggled to get an apprenticeship in Tassie. This is probably 2000. So I just sort of worked a few jobs, got a job for like a couple of weeks at the Olympics, worked front of house at the Olympics at one of the big hotels there, sort of in a corporate thing. And then at the end of 2020, got a job at the casino in Hobart as a first year apprentice. And so that was amazing for me, because it had all these, you know, different outlets, and had sort of fine dining, and then it had, you know, the gaming floor and sort of, you know, buffets, and had sort of so many different things. It was such a good, I felt like it was such a good place to start. Met my, at the time, girlfriend. We then moved to Melbourne, and then that was sort of when it really sort of started. A couple of years after I worked at a restaurant that's now not there anymore. It was called Lux. It was now Mr. Wolf in St Kilda, and that was sort of the awakening. I went there as a third year apprentice, I think third year, and you know, had never sort of been around food like that. I'd always been in hotels and done most of my time in that, and then suddenly just to go to a restaurant where you just focus on one thing, it was such an awakening. You know, there's all these different techniques and, you know, butchery that I'd never kind of come across, and, you know, the head chef and the sous chef were just, you know, such good teachers. You know, trained in the head chef, who's a very good friend of mine now, and my mentor, I suppose. You know, trained with Marco Pierre White, and, you know, they'd come from, like, you know, 3 Hat restaurants in Melbourne, and it was just this. It's something I'd never seen before, and so I was just like, wow, this is amazing. And so I worked with him for quite a while. I sort of rose up the ranks through him and became.
Who was that?
So it was Lee Dundas.
Okay.
So again, really good friend, and, you know, I was his sous chef. Again, back in a hotel, but more restaurant-focused hotel called the Royce, which was on St Kilda Road. I don't know. I think it might have shut down during COVID. But you know, so I sort of worked my way up and became his sous chef, and then and then I was like, you know what, I think I need to sort of, you know, head out and try other things. So then went back to restaurants, worked for a year with the sous chef that I took over from under him as his sous chef. And then again, sort of learn a bit more about butchery and sort of just that. It's those sort of, breaking down sides and, how to truss and how to make sausages and all these things that you don't really see that often. Or that much anymore anyway, terrines and things. And then went to Syracuse, and then that was kind of where it started. I went there as the sous chef and used to run nights so worked under the head chef. Then I left.
It's a fun place.
It
feels like a really fancy hotel foyer.
Well, it used to be a hotel foyer.
Oh, what's that?
Yeah, back in the 1920s or something, the actual whole building was a hotel.
I spoke to Philippa Sibley there when she was the head chef.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's actually just reopened as something else. I can't remember what it's called. Italian guys that have 38 chairs in Paran have opened it.
That's for that.
Yeah, but it was the dining room was. I loved it. I used to love it. It was such a lovely place. Cool. And the guys that owned it.
Tiny kitchen though, right?
Tiny. It was an elevator shaft.
Yeah.
It was literally like an elevator shaft.
Philippa took me out there and I'm going to show you what I did. And I was like, okay.
But like it was amazing what you could do out of that kitchen. Was amazing. That's why small kitchens don't bother me, because I'm like, as long as you know how to structure yourself around a small kitchen, you've got no issue really. Storage was interesting, but so we and then so I was was at Syracuse for a bit, left for my first head chef job, which wasn't great, but then came back and was at Syracuse for sort of just over 3 years as the head chef. And that was great. It was sort of.
So is that more French style food there?
It was. I guess so. I'd sort of call it more modern European, whatever you want to sort of say. I have a love for sort of Asian flavors, and anything really. I don't think I can ever sort of. There's just so much amazing food out there and flavors and cuisines that I don't really want to deny any one thing.
And you're at Seamstress, so that's.
Yes,
Asian
and that was Asian. Yeah, that was sort of more straight down the line Asian fusion, I suppose. I was there I think I was only there for 8 or 9 months. I found that I had some personal things going on. It was an interesting and difficult time.
Okay.
And so that was sort of when I had, after that sort of that time at Seamstress, I decided to step away from that stuff, the nights, and just kind of move into cafes and just try and get a bit of a balance. In the back of my mind, I'd always had, I love cafes and I love the interaction with customers, and, I find that I spend a lot more time at the front than I do in the kitchen these days. But in the back of my mind, there was always this wine bar pull. There was that sort of that... It was like I don't know, I wouldn't say I never looked at it like through rose-coloured glasses, but there was always just like this, such a strong appeal about just the fun and the atmosphere that you have in a wine bar. It's relaxed, it's fun, and I miss the ingredients and and like the ability to kind of do small things that are a bit more intricate, and so there was always that pullback, and I kind of deep down I was always like, yep, it's going to happen one day. There's going to be nights will come back into play somewhere along the line.
And then the serendipity of.
It was,
I love that.
Yeah,
I love that story. Yeah.
It's crazy, that it started with a conversation with Dennis and Liz, and then, sort of Chris came into it, and then Evan just kind of happened to be like, wait, hang on, I hear this, I've got here, I love the idea of what you're doing. What do you what do you think? And it just kind of grew from there.
And how do you manage 2 businesses though? That's a lot.
It is a lot. It's harder. It's harder than I thought in some ways. This persistent liquor license issue that should be fixed soon has made it harder, because it's sort of like Savarin's never been able to have its like a proper go at it. Once a week is not sort of what we want to do, obviously. No. But it's hard. We can't sort of set systems in place in stone that, this is how it should be done. No one has sort of muscle memory of like, it's not a smooth service. It's great and it runs well. But I think until we're doing our 4 nights, it hasn't had a chance to find its feet properly. So, it's an interesting juggle at the moment. There are days and weeks where I feel like I give neither place the attention that it needs. I'm lucky that I have a really amazing crew at Custodian. You know, Jerry's a great partner, and our chef is, you know, I know that she has my back. And you know, and I worked hard to kind of get everybody, or, you know, get it to a place where I could be like, okay, I'm going to step back a little bit because I knew that I'd be doing this, and that for the most part has worked. But I think once we're doing, I guess I have an idea in my mind of how we can kind of set both places up so that I have the ability to come and go a little bit. But I don't think it's ever going to be easy. I never expected it to be easy. I mean, having one business is never easy. There's, you know, every time you think you settle into something like this new routine, someone's like, I can't do this anymore. And you're like, okay, all right, back to the drawing board, you know. Yeah. So, but yeah, it's, again, I think it just comes back to once Savarin's sort of doing what it needs to do, it'll be a lot easier to manage.
Yeah.
You know.
And it's sort of back to the Frenchy style food with local produce, which is lovely.
Yeah, yeah. And again, you know, like a lot of the suppliers we use, I've sort of had relationships with for years. I mean, you know, for Flinders and Co, I've been using them for, you know, they were newish. I think they're just, you know, and it happened with the conversation. I wanted some wallaby. And my meat supplier at the time was like, look, we can get it to you, but it usually goes to New South Wales. Give this guy a call because they do wallaby from Flinders Island. And I'm like, okay, great. And the next day, James Madden, the guy who is, you know, started up Flinders & Co with his dad, was in Syracuse with wallaby, all these different wallaby samples.
Yeah, amazing. You
know, and they've grown into this. You know, they've done it hard as well with COVID, and you know, and not obviously they service restaurants more than the cafes, but you know, like we get our meat from them, and it's great. You know, I mean, you know, the guys are. You know, it's just, I guess you kind of had that opportunity to use the people that you want to use, knowing that you have access to the products that they have because it's the quality, or it has a bit of a story, or it's, you know, it's a little bit special. You know, another guy that I used to use who used to buy sort of, you know, French mushrooms and truffles and things, who I hadn't used much because, you know, in a cafe I can't use truffles, I can't use caviar. But as soon as we did Savarin, I'm like, I know that he's got amazing tinned sardines and tinned anchovies. I know he can get me caviar and, you know, things that I've been wanting, you know, the things that I missed, the sort of the little thing that was burning in the back of my mind that was in a wine bar. You get to kind of have these things again, and so that's the appeal.
So it seems like you do, but do you still get excited about planning dishes?
I do. I do, and it's, you know, some dishes can plague me for months. They can just be an idea that I can never get out of my head. It just takes forever. And then some things will literally just be, oh, that's in season, before I even realise that there's a whole dish there ready to go.
Yeah. And do you have cookbooks, or you look at other people's stuff?
I mean, look,
just repertoire, and
it's a bit of everything. It's a bit of experimentation. It's a bit of what can I do with that that's, you know, that's not what people might expect. You know, I never want food to be inapproachable. I don't want anyone to be like, that's too scary for me to try. I don't think that's what Savarin ever set out to be. I don't think that's what Custodian ever set out to be. You know, but it's, you know, if we have the word beetroot on the menu, it might not be how you would expect it to be, you know, or so it's sort of about trying to find a bit of a fun or a bit of a play on something as well. You know, we have a mushroom parfait on the menu at Savarin, which was literally just you know, just kind of a thought about, well, can I make a mushroom parfait, like pate, same style that you would a duck pate or a chicken pate, but make with mushrooms. Yeah, so we're exactly the same. Do exactly the same thing, just it's vegetarian. Definitely not vegan. But, you know, it's amazing. But then we garnish it with like this sherry honeycomb. So make honeycomb, but instead of using honey as sort of like the main flavour, we just substitute it with golden syrup and sherry vinegar. And it's just kind of like this little sweet crunch of a garnish. You know, and it's just a little simple thing that I don't want to sort of push it in people's face to the point where they're like, that sounds really weird, and I don't think that I want to have this dish because that sounds too confronting. It's just that twist on a play. It's like a little twist on something that's, you know, everybody knows. There just kind of comes this little nice garnish that like adds to the dish. So And that kind of just started as I wonder if I can do it. And so quite often I just find myself in the kitchen just being, this is really funny. I love recipes. I think they are it's the key to consistency and quality, which is what I base the businesses on. But I was never taught with recipes. I was always shown how to do something, and that was it. But I cook without recipes, so I just do it, and then be like, okay, do I need to add this? Do I need to do that? How does this taste? Whatever. But then I have to separate myself back again and be like, okay, well, I did this much and I did this much, and I have to write it all down, because I think it's one thing for me to be able to do it, but everybody needs to be able to do it, because there's no point having a dish on the menu if only one person can cook that dish. That's not how things should be. It should be that everyone should be able to be comfortable enough. And obviously I'll be like, okay, this is how we do it, and show them the first time, but it should never be that's too scary for me to try and cook. I won't do it. I'll just leave it for him to cook.
That's right.
Yeah. And so, that's sort of where like I said, some things are really easy and just sort of happen, and then others just will haunt me for ages. It'll just, and it'll literally just be that I'm like, I know what I want to do, and I can almost visualize something.
Yeah.
But I just have no idea quite what it's going to be.
All looks amazing on Instagram, and I do want to come back over when there are more nights to choose from.
And that's it. And like, people say that to me all the time, and it's, I get it. Like, it's great that we can do the one night, and it's so much fun. But it's also hard for us because we're trying to push a whole week's worth of sort of everything into one night, right. And that it gets pretty crazy. I think doing the 4 nights, it'll spread out a little bit. We'll all relax.
Yeah, that's right.
Because we're not trying to be, this nervous ball of excited energy that is like, oh my God, we've got like 40 people coming in and we have to, give them the best that we can give. We can kind of relax, and we can be in our space and really get to enjoy our space for what it is.
And I think also, just as a final question, I think you've really found your space now and know what you need to do for you within this hospitality arena. What would be your advice to someone who wants to become a chef now?
Look, I think do it. I think it's a really lovely time to be a chef, because I think, it's not the most glamorous trade, but I think a lot of us are doing it for ourselves. A lot of us are opening our own businesses. And so I think for someone who is coming into it new, there's opportunities now to work for people who have seen the scary bad side of it, come out and been like, this is not how it should be. It should be more about balance. It should be more about enjoyment. It should be more about the passion. And I think that's really great as someone who is getting into cooking. I see there's not as many apprentices around, and, we relied on, internationals and things. But, every time, we see students from the TAFE or Le Cordon Bleu come down, it's a great thing to see this kind of like, these new kids in their shiny new uniforms and, ready to face the world, because it's great, there's so much good stuff happening, and I think there's a lot more support and awareness for the new generation coming through now. I hope that answered the question.
Absolutely. Thank you.
No, that's all right. I feel like I just totally rambled.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Conversation with a Chef with Hugh Sanderson. If you want to experience all the greatness for yourself, which of course you do, you can check out Custodian Kitchen and Bar Savarin. They're both on Instagram, at Custodian Kitchen and at bar.savarin, and see all the beautiful food and ambiance. As for me, I'm also on Instagram at Conversation with a Chef, and if you want to read the chat, you can head to www.conversationwithachef.com. I would absolutely love it if you told a friend about my chats, and of course you can follow me on Apple and Spotify podcasts. Once again, thanks for listening and have a great day.